right here, right? We are still in module 3. We went through a series for the Little's Law, and at the end, we are working on Walmart, right, with the information that we have here. So let's review the information a little bit, and then we go back to the calculation. So for Walmart, for the year of 2020, we know that the net sales will be 555,233 million dollars. Everything here is in terms of million dollars, and the cost of goods sold is 420,315 million dollars, and the inventory is 44,949 million dollars, right? So the difference between the revenue or net sales and cost of goods sold is the following. The revenue includes the cost and the profit, right? And the cost of goods sold is only the cost of the merchandise that Walmart sold in 2020. So that's why the revenue number is way bigger than the cost of goods sold number, right? So based on these numbers, we're gonna do more calculation later on. So let me go back to the whiteboard, and then we work on this. Okay, so let's do module 3. About process performance. And we're still in the big topic of inventory turns. And inventory costs, right? And the example that we have is about Walmart. And again, this is module 3, slide 31. Okay, so we already have the data. I hope I don't have to rewrite here in the table, but I will write somewhere here when we do the calculation. So the table that we are working on is very similar to what you would do for question 21 in your homework. So hopefully what we do here will help you when you do the homework assignment later. So this is a part 1 of the table where we have some basic information about Walmart, right? By the way, on slide 31, I also have the data for Target. So I encourage everybody to also try that, right? So that you can do the side-by-side comparison between Walmart and Target. So again, earlier we already have the revenue, the cost of goods sold, and the inventory, right? So today we move on to the next number called the gross profit margin. Or GPM. So GPM is calculated as the following. We take the net sale, remember net sale is the revenue, and subtract the cost of goods sold. If we stop here, we call this as a gross profit of the company, of Walmart, right? But we don't stop here. We try to calculate the percentage. So we take that divided by the net sale, and then we would multiply that with 100%, that as a percentage, right? Because we want to know that, so this equation says that out of this revenue, how much will be our profit. So let's try the numbers. and we would like to see the GPM of Walmart. So remember the gross profit, the revenue is 555,233, and then the cost of goods sold is 420,315. Right, all of these are millions of dollars, but because they have the same units, right, the millions of dollars will be canceled out. So we have that minus that divided by the revenue, right? Gross profit for the whole Walmart company divided by the revenue in 2020. And then we multiply these with 100%. Okay? So here is the answer. I pre-calculated this value. So where do you have the answer here? So it's 24.30%. Right? It can be more decimal places, but for now we just use 2. So it means the following: if Walmart is selling $100 worth of merchandise, right? Then out of the $100 revenue, $24.30 are part of the gross profit. We call it as a gross profit because later on you have to net out the taxes and other costs, right, before the net income. So that's why at this level we only have the gross number. Okay, so that's the first next thing that we can do. Actually, if you read Walmart annual reports or the Form 10K, right, they also report this number, 24.3% gross profit margin, or sometimes they just call that as a margin. But then actually we can calculate the number on our own, right? So it should be the same as what they report in their book. They also use the same equation to calculate it. The next number that we need to know is the following. It is called the annual inventory holding cost rate. It's a long name. So that's why we have an acronym here, a long acronym too. Annual inventory holding cost rate, right? So what is this number? If we hold $1 on the shelf in some form of merchandise for the whole year, that's why it says here annual, right? So again, if we hold $1 on the shelf for the whole year, then it's going to cost us how much money, right? So that's a notion that we need to know. And you know what? In real life, it's so difficult to calculate these based on the financial data or using accounting methods, right? So normally the companies would assume a number for themselves. And in this particular example, we choose the number of 30%. This is a given number, right? Remember, this is for the whole year. So it means that if we hold on to $1 on the shelf for 1 year, the holding cost is 30 cents, right? 30 cents out of $1 is 30%. So that's the number that we have to assume. So by now we're already done with the part 1 of the table. In part 1, we are looking at the basic and general information about Walmart. And in part 2, we can do what we want to know, right? So in part 2, we want to know the flow time and the inventory turns. Remember, last time we talked about the inventory turns as one of the most important metrics in retail, right? So in part 2 of the table, we have the opportunity to calculate that number. All right, so this is part 2 of the table. If it is on your paper page, you can easily extend the table. But for me, every time I have to draw the frame again, so that we know where we are in the table. So this is, we would calculate the flow time. And together with that, we would calculate the turn, right? And again, this is for Walmart. And in the slide, you would find the data for Target. I encourage you to try that too, for Target, so that you can compare Walmart and Target side by side regarding their performance, right? Before doing any calculation, let me show you a picture. And hopefully you'll see why or what we do here. So this time around, we are looking at Walmart. In your homework, you don't have to draw this picture. So Walmart is a retail process. And just imagine what you see at Walmart. You see all the food items, the household goods like furniture. We see electronics. We see toys. We see clothes. We see shoes. Everything, right? So there are thousands and thousands of different items in the store, and there's no way for us to add them up directly, right? So that's why among the 1,000 items, we have to find a common unit, so that at the end we can count how many units, and then we can add them up. Okay, so in that case, the only common units among all of the thousands of items are what? Are the dollars. So in this case, we're gonna choose the dollar to be the flow unit going through the Walmart retail process, right? So really talk about the flow unit now. We can measure the flow rate. The flow rate in this case is what? Is actually the cost of goods sold. And the cost of goods sold, we know that it is $420,315 million, right? So that's the flow rate. Why is that the flow rate? Because this is the amount of dollars that enter the process, right? They enter the retail process at the beginning. And at the end, after we get the items sold, we get them back. That's why we call that as a cost of goods sold. But of course, remember, when we get the item sold, beside the cost, we also have the profit on top of it, right? But for the sake of our calculation here, we will not consider the profit as part of the flow rate. Okay, the flow rate is how many dollars going in, and at the end they come back to Walmart, right? And then later on they can reinvest it to make another turn. But we do not consider the profit when we talk about the flow rate here. All right, the profit is for other calculation. All right, so we know the flow rate. And in the book, they also report the inventory. So the I, in this case, is $44,949 million. So 44,949, right, $1 million. So in this case, right, we are looking at a process, and we know the inventory, we know the flow rate. So on average, by the Little's law, we can figure out the flow time, right? So the flow time is unknown here, and that's what we need to find. Just imagine if we need to calculate the flow time on our own, and you have to either track millions of dollars when they are spent, when they come back to Walmart, right? Or you have to track thousands and thousands of items when they were bought and when they were sold, right? To calculate the individual flow times and average all of them up to have the average flow time. It's nearly impossible. I would say impossible to do that, right? So that's why in this case, definitely we have to use the Little's law. to infer about the flow time. So by the Little's law, we can find the flow time as the inventory divided by the flow rate. Yeah, I write here I, but just keep in mind that's an inventory, right? The merchandise inventory. By the way, the flow rate here is actually the cost of goods sold, so let me fix it to be the cost of goods sold, right? So the flow time, or how long it takes for $1 to go through Walmart, is the inventory divided by the cost of goods sold. And we did a lot of examples earlier about the Little's laws, and I hope that everybody knows how to understand this equation, right? All right, so that's the basis for us to find the flow time for Walmart. So let's continue our table here. So in the next step, we can find the flow time. So flow time for T equals the merchandise inventory divided by the cost of goods sold. I would like the whole class to try and share your answers in the chat window. So what is the flow time here? And along the way, please also think about the unit of the final result. By the way, to be more clear, in this case, the cost of goods sold here is $420,315 million per year, right? Because that's a per year, the annual data. So please try to find the flow time and also share your result with the units in the chat window. Why? It's a lot of money here. But then think about it, the $1 million are the common terms. You can cancel them, right? Cancel them out, and the remaining numbers should be manageable. So what is the flow time in this case? All right, so I got the first answer from Elita. And by one blink of my eye, I see a lot of answers already. All right, let me, okay, Elita, Felin, Marco, what about other students? Oh, by the way, I see the unit here too. I really appreciate that. Good. And Jaylene also agree with everybody else, Solin, Christopher, all right? Good. Also got the same thing, William, also the same thing. Good job. So you all got it correct. I believe everybody else also can get that too. So let me try this with you. So the flow time in this case, right, is the inventory, which is 44949 million dollars. Just a lot of money, right? Inc. also have that. All right, so divided by 420, 315, also $1 million, right, per year. So the $1 million will be canceled out, and the year will be flipped up, right? So that's why at the end we get the number and the unit. The unit is got a built-in, it's got an automatic, so that we can make sense of the number, right? So because I would like to keep some more precision, let me give you the answer that I get from my Excel calculation. So 0.0 0.10694 years. Okay, that is correct. The problem is, does anybody make sense of this number? What is 0.106 of a year? What is that? It's really hard, right? So that's why we normally convert the year number to the days number. And we call that as the days of supply. The days of supply is just the flow time again that we express in days, okay? So that's a flow time in days. All right, so it means the following, and normally we assume that a year, 1 year is 365 days. All right, so here's a calculation. We take 0.10694 years, and instead of years, we multiply, instead of 1 year, right, we multiply with 365 days. All right, so technically we just say that 0.1694 year or this many days. It's not difficult at all. So if we calculate this, then it's gonna be 39.03 days. All right, so what does that mean? It means that on average, Walmart can sell a typical item through in 39 days. They invest in the merchandise today, and on average, after 39 days, that merchandise will be sold, right? So think about that. It's a very fast process. Or another way to think about that is the following. If we imagine we are looking at a dollar going through the Walmart process, right? Then the dollar will be floating in the system for about 39 days, and it will exit at the end when the some merchandise got sold, and then they get back the dollars, right? So 39 days for the dollar to go through the Walmart process, or for Walmart to recuperate the investment of $1 earlier, right? Or another way to think about this number is the following, in the following way. So if Walmart buy a merchandise item today, then that item will stay on the shelf for about 39 days. And then after that, it will get sold, right? And you know what? There's another way to think about it. So if we need to close down a Walmart store today, to close down a Walmart store, then from today on, they will not take in any merchandise. They only try to sell off the remaining merchandise in the store. The question is, how many days does it take, right? And the answer is 39 days. On average, it will take the store about 39 days to sell off the whole merchandise in the store. Or in general, right? They would have the inventory worth of 39 days sales, right? All right, so we can call that as a days of supply, or there's another name that we can call here in our class. We call that as an inventory duration. How long the merchandise normally stays in the system before getting sold, right? So that's an inventory duration. Is everybody good? Any question for me at this point? Okay, so I assume that you are doing good. But we're not done with part 2 yet. We already calculated the flow time either in years or in days, right? If we just talk about the flow time, then think about that as years. But if it is a days of supply, then we know it is 39 days. By the way, it is a good time to for me to talk about what happens at Target, okay? In the slide, I have the data for Target, so I would I encourage you to try that when you have time. But I have the data, I have the result for Target. So the days of supply at Walmart is 39 days. We just calculated that. And at Target, the days of supply is 58.7 days, or about 59 days, right? So 39 days at Walmart and 59 days at Target. Can you see the big difference over there, right? Walmart is a much faster retail process than Target is. So Target is nearly 59 days, whereas Walmart is only 39 days. So, but we are in the era of online operations. So let me give you another number for Amazon.com. For Amazon.com, you know what is a days of supply is? The days of supply is 37 days. Okay. At Walmart is 39 days. At Amazon is 37 days. A little bit faster, right? But of course, think about Walmart. They are also very impressive. They are quite neck and neck with Amazon in cycling the dollars through, right? Okay, so some real life data here for us to make sense of what is going on in the economy. All right, so we're not done with the part two. Let's continue it. This time around, now we are ready to calculate the turns. And at the end of the day, the turn is among the most important metrics in retail. So a manager will need to look at that number very closely, right? Track that number very closely. All right, so we are still in the part two about the flow time and the turns. And we focus on the data at Walmart. And the inventory turns is calculated as the following. It is 1 divided by the flow time. Okay, so let's try the numbers and see what it is. You know what? I would like to give you another equation here. So 1 divided by the flow time means 1 divided by the t that we got earlier, the 0.1069 years, right? But then what is t? Remember, the earlier equation is the following for t. T equals inventory divided by the cost of goods sold, right? That's a little law right here. Inventory divided by the flow rate. That's the T. So if I rewrite the equation like this, then the turns will be eventually cost of goods sold divided by the inventory, right? So actually there are two equivalent ways to calculate the turns. Either you flip the flow time or you calculate the turns directly based on the cost of goods sold and the inventory. Right? Either way, it's going to be exactly the same answer. So in terms of the flow time, you would write that down as 1 divided by 1 divided by the 0.106. Let me make sure that I got the correct number. 10694. Right, years. Please don't forget the years. So that's the first way to calculate it, 1 divided by that. And the second way is we take cost of goods sold, which is 420,315 million dollars per year, divided by the inventory, which is $44,949 million, right? So that's the second way to calculate it. And if you either try the first way or the second way, the numbers must be the same, right? So in this case, the number will come out to be 9.35093. The question is, what is the unit of this number? So if we look at the equation, right, either the first one or the second one, we will not see the $1 million anymore. They will be canceled out, right? The only unit that we see here is the years. And the years here will be at the denominator, right, per year. This one will go down here to be per year here. So, so the units here are the following. This is how many tons, right? So that's the tons, the turnovers, or the times, or the cycles at Walmart that we see in a year. So the per year is still here, right? In the equation, we have the per year, and it will stay there. So the answer here is at Walmart, they can turn the merchandise 9.35 times a year. Or the merchandise at Walmart can make 9.35 tons in a year. Or you can say that the dollar cycled through Walmart 9.35 times, right? Whatever you say, it should be good because we talk about the same information here, okay? So this is an average ton in the year. How about Target? So we know that Walmart is faster than Target. So we know that Target tons will be lower than that of Walmart, right? So at Target, it is 6.251 tons, 6.2 tons in a year. And at Amazon, the tons is 9.8 times in a year, right? So Amazon and then Walmart are very fast retail processes, right? In a year, they coins the merchandise through many times. And that's how they make a lot of revenue, right? In the year. So Walmart is still the king in the retail industry, right? Their revenues is still a lot, and but Amazon now is a king of the e-tail industry, of the online retail, right? Okay, because they are fast processes. Any questions so far about the terms? Are you good? Okay, so again, part one, part two are the general information about the whole Walmart, right? In part one, the basic information. In part two, we calculate the flow time of the whole supply chain or the inventory turns of the whole company, right? But in part three, we would do something different. Many of you are here today, you would become a manager someday, possibly at Walmart, Target, many other retailers or any other companies, right? You might need to consider this item or other item because you want to carry the items that seems or expect to make the most profit, right? So in the part three of the table, we are looking at a particular item and see how profitable that item is so that later on you can make the decision to carry the item or carry something else, right? So let's move on to the third part of the table. So again, because my space is limited, I have to draw the frame every time. But for you, I hope you just expand your table, make it longer, and then you can designate that as part three. So part three of the table, we talk about a particular item. So So this is an item consideration at Walmart. So the manager at this point is considering the item. They do not have the item yet. They do not buy the item yet, right? So how profitable it is, then we have to go through a series of calculations to know it. Based on the offers by the regular supplies, right? Walmart will know how much it costs to buy a particular item. So in this case, we assume that the item cost is $50 per unit. Right? It can be a pair of shoes, a good pair of shoes. They buy it at $50 per pair, and then they will mark it up and sell it at a higher price. Right? So that's normally is the case. So that's the item cost. It can be a pair of shoes, some household good items, right? So the cost is $50. So let's call this item cost as C. In the next step, we would need to calculate the holding cost of the item because we know that when we buy the item today, we do not sell it instantly. At Walmart, it's going to take about 39 days, right? So we need to figure out how much it costs to hold on to the inventory during the 39 days. Before we can do it, we need to calculate the so-called per unit inventory holding cost rate. It's a little bit longer name, right? And again, the acronym is also long too. Per unit inventory holding cost rate. Let me write out the equation first, and then we will try to make sense of what it is. The per unit inventory holding cost rate equals the annual inventory holding cost rate divided by the turns. Of course, the turns here, everything is per year, right? So let me remind you, the annual inventory holding cost rate is the number that we assume at the beginning right here. Right? This is the annual inventory holding cost rate. So again, if you hold on to $1 for the whole year, it's going to cost you 30 cents, right? So that's the annual rate. But this time around, we try to calculate that per turn. So I would like you to try it and share your answers in the chat window, right? Because it is involved with some kind of percentages. So you should try it because sometimes the percentages will make it confusing in our calculation, right? So the equation here says that we take 30% divided by 9.35. Let me make it for sure that it is correct. 9.35093 tons per year, right? So please try this and share your answer in the chat window. So what would you have at the end? Here's my hint for you. So whenever you see the percentage like this, right? When we do not need the percentage yet, then don't touch it. You only look at the number 30 here, take 30 divided by that, and then at the end, carry the percentage over, right? Don't do anything about the percentage, otherwise it is confusing. So work with it. So what would be the answer that you have? Let's try and check. Okay, so I got the first answer, and then from Geraldine and now from Elita, right? V also the same. Good. Good. Yeah, so that's the way to go, because sometimes it's confusing, right? Solin, Brianna, Christopher also got the same thing. That's very good. All right. So again, what you do is you take 30 divided by 9.35 as a number, right? And then you carry the percentage symbol over. So because I work everything in Excel, I can give you something quite precise here. So the final answer here is 3.20824%. In the homework or in the exam, normally I specify how many decimal places that you should keep, okay? Okay, so that's 3.2%, but then the question is, what does that mean, right? Let me draw a picture to illustrate what it is. So for example, we are looking at the fiscal year at Walmart. That's the beginning of the year, that's the end of the year. And if we hold something on the shelf for the whole year, it's gonna cost 30%, right? That's a chosen number, that's a given number right at the beginning of the example. But we know that an item at Walmart would not stay there for the whole year. Typically, it will get sold after 39 days, right? So it doesn't make sense to calculate the holding cost for the whole year. It only makes sense to calculate the holding cost during one turn. And one turn is right here. And in that turn, it's going to cost 3.2% of the item cost, right? So that's the meaning of the per unit inventory holding cost rate. If I name this, I might want to name that as per turn inventory holding cost rate. Okay, so that's the cost rate per turn. By the way, I think that I forgot to mention another name for the annual inventory holding cost rate. Please backtrack a little bit. There's a second name for this. It is called a carrying charge rate, right? So that's the cost that the cost of carrying the item for the whole year, or the cost of holding on to the item for the whole year. So we call that as a carrying charge rate. Later on, we might call that name. Okay, so let's go back to this slide. So again, to calculate the per turn, then you take the year or the annual carrying charge rate divided by the turns, right? Then we have that 3.2%. And now we are ready to calculate the holding cost of the item. The holding cost of the item equals the cost of the item multiplied with the per unit inventory holding cost rate, right? I believe it is easy for everybody. So let me work on this with you. So the holding cost of this pair of shoes or some household items is the following. It is a holding cost because the item will stay there for about 39 days. So during those 39 days, it's going to cost Walmart to hold on to that item, right? So it is $50 multiplied with 3.20824%. But in calculation, this time around, you should convert it to the percentage. I mean, the decimal number, right? So 0.0320824 and no percent at the end because there is a decimal number, right? So that multiplied with that, then we have the holding cost of 1.60 or $1.60 60 cents, right? There might be more decimal places down here, but in accounting, if we just talk about an item like this, right, then we stop at the cent level. So $1.60. But of course, when later on we talk about many items, we have to multiply, then any decimal places will be helpful, right? Because at Walmart, they talk about thousands or sometimes millions of units. So the decimal places are definitely necessary in the calculation. Okay, so again, here we are talking about a particular item at Walmart. We don't have the item yet. The manager is doing a pre-calculation to see if it is justified to carry the item or not, right? So we know the item cost, we know the per ton charge rate, and now we know the holding cost of the item during one turn. All right, so let's continue. We are still in the part 3 of the table. Now to calculate the profit of this expected profit of this item, we need to know how much we're going to sell it for, right? So that's the selling price of the item. So let's calculate it based on what we already have. We are still in part 3 about that particular item at Walmart. So the next number that we can calculate is called the expected selling price. We say expected because we don't have the item yet. We are doing the pre-calculation or the thought experiment to see if it is profitable or not, right? So we call that as P. So the equation is the following. The expected selling price equal the cost of the item divided by 1 minus the GPM. That's a gross profit margin, or sometimes in the annual report, they only call it as a margin, okay? What is that? So if we go to the first slide of today, you see that we actually calculated that gross profit margin, 24.3%, right? On average, out of $100 sale, Walmart can make $24.30 as their gross profit, right? So based on this, we can kind of estimate the selling price if they actually carry the item. So I would like everybody to try this one, right? What is the expected selling price of this particular item? And please share. So the C is item cost $50. 1 is 1. The GPM is the 24.3%, right? So how would you calculate it? In the past, some students got it totally wrong because they made some mistake. So hopefully you would know how to do it here. So I got it from Geraldine, from Elita, right? Also from Marco. And I believe other students can do that too. But sometimes it's along the way it's a little bit tricky. Okay, so let me work on this with you. We know that the cost is $50, right? So we write out $50. And then in the denominator, we have 1 minus 24.30%. So in the past, some students just take 1 minus 24.3 and they have a negative number, right? Then the whole thing will be wrong. So the trick here is you should convert the percentage to a decimal number before you do the calculation. So it should be 0.2430, right? 24.3% is 0.2430. And then by the order of operation, you need to do the subtraction first. And then at the end, you're going to have the result, right? So you would write that as $50 divided by 0.7570. While you add them up, then it's going to be 1 point off. And then at the end, we have $66.05. And a lot of you get that right, so that's correct. So we talk about the unexpected selling price of $66.05. Of course, everything here is per unit of the item, right? We buy 1 unit for $50, and we expect to sell it at $66.05. So some of you might ask me, how about $69.99, right? Yeah, it can be, but on average, sometimes you have to net out the discount or the sales prices, right? So that's why we expect it to be 66. Here, yeah, later on we're gonna do that. In this case, we only talk about earlier. We talk about the holding cost. We talk about the item cost. We talk about the holding cost, right? And before we can calculate the profit, we calculate the expected selling price first. And later on, we can take into account the cost to calculate the profit of the item. So yeah, your question is a little bit ahead of our time, just a little bit ahead. And now we can do the next calculation, right? So we know how much we can sell it for, how much it costs, right? Then we can calculate the gross profit of the item. So the gross profit of the item is the following: GP equals the expected selling price minus the cost of the item, right? So actually, because we do not have the item yet, then the correct name for this should be the expected gross profit of the item. But for now, we just call it as a gross profit of this particular item. So this one is easy. Let me work on this with you. We know that we expect to sell it at $66.05, and it costs $50 to acquire it, right? Then the gross profit of the item is going to be $16.05, right? And normally that should make a good sense here, because Walmart tried to make some profit, and to do that they would have to mark up the price to be higher than before, higher than the item cost, right? To make some profit. The profit margin needs to be big enough so that later on they can net out the taxes and other costs, so that at the end, at least they have some net income for the company, right? All right, so that's a gross profit. But then as a manager in retail, we should always keep in mind that we cannot sell the items instantly, right? Normally, the items should stay on the shelf for some time, meaning that we're going to incur some holding costs for the item. So if we just take $16.5 as our gross profit, then we might miss something big here. So as a manager, you should factor in the holding cost of the item, and that profit number should be a better measurement of profitability, right? So here is the last item, the last calculation of the table. We call that as an immediate gross profit of the item, or IGP. So I'm sorry, I'm not in the accounting major, so I have to make up the name. Immediate gross profit means the following. We have to immediately factor in the holding cost of the item to see if that item is profitable or not, right? So the equation for the IGP is the following. You will take the gross profit of the item and then subtract the holding cost of the item, right? To see how profitable it is. Because we know that the item will stay on the shelf for some time and it's going to cost us some money, right? So that's why we have to factor that holding cost into the gross profit right away. Or equivalently, you can think about this as we take the expected selling price minus the cost of the item, and then subtract the holding cost of the item, right? So there are two different ways to do it. And I believe that is not difficult for anybody. So let me work on this. Oh, by the way, I would like you to try it because please find out the information and find the answer to this question. So what would be the immediate gross profit, right? We need to look around the table and find the correct numbers and do the calculation. So please figure that out and share. What would be the IGP of this item? All right, so Christopher, Elita, Sophia, Brianna, you all agree that's good? Yeah, and that means that you know how to find the numbers, right? Uh, it is always good to reflect on what we do, and examples like this will really help us, right? I hope so. Good. So I already see all of the answer, and I believe that other student can also do the same. So in this case, right, there are two ways to do it. Either you take the gross profit minus the holding cost. That's one way to do it. Or equivalently, we do it as 66.05 expected selling price minus the $50 cost and minus the 1.60 holding cost. All right. So either way, we're gonna have $14.45 as the expected profit of this item. So as a manager, right, you think about this item, you also think about another item. If the second item, another item, can generate more profit, then maybe that's the way to go. Because shelves are limited. If you put this item on the shelf, then you lose the potential sales opportunity for another item, right? So as a manager, you have to look at many items and make a decision of what items that you should carry. Of course, at Walmart, besides profitability, the profit of one item, they also worry about the diversity, the variety of the items, because more variety, then you can entice people to do the one-stop shop, and then you generate revenues that way, right? So this is one consideration here about the absolute profit, but sometimes you do not just carry one item, you want also to have the variety of the items in the store, right? So that's how, that's one of the biggest benefits that Walmart gives their consumers, right? So any question for me about this? Normally in the homework question or the exam question, I would specify the number of places, number of decimal places that you should keep, right? So please just follow the guys in the question. Any question? Okay, so I take that as you are good.
Could you just once again go back through part 1, 2, or the parts of this so that I can make sure I have all the formulas down?
Okay, so let me go through it. This is part 1, okay? We call it the GPM. Okay, right. And then still in and then part 2, we have the inventory divided by the cost of goods sold, right? That's the flow time equation. And by the way, the days of supply is easy. You just convert the days into the years into the day. Oh, okay. How to get the information in part 1? Okay, I will try that for you. And then the flow time, right? So in the flow time, the turns, it is 1 divided by the flow time, right? Or we can do that as cost of goods sold divided by the inventory. I hope I do not go too fast. Right, that's a turn. And then the per unit inventory holding cost rate is just the annual rate divided by the number of turns. And at the end, not at the end, but the holding cost, right, will be the item cost multiplied with the per unit inventory holding cost rate. Okay. And then finally, we find the expected selling price, C divided by 1 minus GPM. And then the gross profit of that particular item is the price minus the cost. And the IGP is the gross profit minus the holding cost. Right. If you do not know that yet, in case, okay, every day I post the class notes like this on Canvas in the modules page. So in module 00, the very first module of that page, when you expand that folder, you're gonna see the daily class notes like this, so that you can verify with your handwritten notes, right? For some of you might miss a class, then please feel free to use my notes as for your catching up with the class progress. I hope you are good so far, right? All right. So there's a question about how to find the data for the part 1. Let me show that to you very quick. We are short on time, so I have to do it very quick for you. So for Walmart, right, you would go to, oh, by the way, right, maybe you want to ask me about the homework question, right? The homework question 21 is about the Home Depot and Lowe's. So for example, you have to go to corporate.lowe's.com, or corporate.home depot. Let me try that for you. Okay, so corporate.homedepot.com. Oh, I'm sorry, I have not shared that right. Right, let me. All right, let me try that again. All right, sorry. Right, so I would type in corporate, or you can go to the like here. That's corporate dot. Why it doesn't show here, right? Corporate. I don't know why it doesn't show exactly what I'm trying to show you. So, for example, if you click on the HomeDepot.com
There's one
website,
right below it. The link right below that one, I think. Yeah.
yeah, I know, but in my second device here, I did not see that the screen show you what I'm trying to show you. I see that in my screen, but I am not quite sure if you see that. Do you see that?
Corporate.home depot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so this is a Home Depot website, right? If you scroll down a little bit, then you're gonna see you can find where that thing, corporate information, okay? So corporate information, so actually the site is corporate.homedepot.com. For Lowe's is corporate.lowes.com, right? And then you would look for investor relation. And then you would go down here, fiscal year 2020 10K, right? That's the data that you need to look for the 2020 annual report.
I
So
think
you would, yeah,
I
you're
think
welcome.
it's a different screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it shows like www.homedepot.com.
Oh yeah. So after you click on the investor relation, then it's gonna show that as ir.homedepot.com. So either way, okay, please go to homedepot.com, scroll down, find the investor relation or the corporate Home Depot corporate, something like that, right? Then at the end, you're gonna see like what I'm showing you. That's why earlier because sometimes you know what, sometimes Zoom is acting up with my computers. I don't know why. So, but that's how we would find the data. See, it is acting up right now. Okay, let me share that one more time, right? What I just did is the following. I go to the homedepot.com, right? And then I scroll down by the investor relation or the corporate side. And when I click on that, then it says here IR, investor relation, homedepot.com. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you would find the 2020 annual report, or you can equivalently, you can download the fiscal year 2020 10K form, right? Either way would give you the same information, okay? And then you download the PDF file and you look for the cost of goods sold or cost of sales or the inventory or the net sales, things like that. And then you're gonna have the data like what I have, right? You know, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to search inside the PDF file. So for example, for the inventory, you would look for the consolidated balance sheets. Then in that table, you would find the inventory because inventory is part of the assets, right? So you would find the data over there. So I hope that when you try this on your own, you're gonna find the data that you need. All right. Okay. Yeah, because we're short on time, let me go back to the content a little bit. So today we need to start module 4. We're done with module 3. In module 3, we gotta focus on the 3 fundamental metrics and tie them together by the Little's Law and do a lot of applications of the Little's Law through many examples, right? You will see more examples on Connect 2. So, but in module 4, we gotta go deeper inside the processes. So we call this as process analysis. So in process analysis, we try to have an internal look at the process, and then we can measure deeper metrics. And then we can find out, after we find out the deeper metrics, we can make other important decisions, right? So module 3 is for us to measure the 3 fundamental metrics and make important decisions. And here we find other metrics and make other important decisions, right? All right, so here is an overview of what we do in module 4. This is an overview of the main content. Beside the main content, we will have other topics. So first of all, we will learn how to draw the process flow diagrams. All right, and after that, so we do the process flow diagrams to make sense of the process, to see how it is structured, how it is working inside the process, right? That's why we call that as an internal look. So after that, we're gonna go to level 1 analysis. In level 1 analysis, we are looking at processes with one step and only one flow unit type. So let me, later on, I will use this acronym to make it shorter, okay? So this is a very simple process, like a printer. We just fit the paper in and then we get the prints out, right? So it's a very simple process, only one step through and only one flow unit type through. In level 2 analysis, we are looking at processes with multiple steps, but then we only have one flow unit type, right? So it's a little bit more complicated than the level 1 analysis. For example, if we look at the car wash process, then we treat all the cars the same. So only one type going through, but then each car will have to go through a different station, the soap, the rinse, and the blowing stations, right? Right. And then we would build up the level of complexity. And in level 3, we talk about that as processes with multiple steps, and at the same time, we have multiple flow unit types. Okay. For example, if we talk about a restaurant, then the restaurant will have to cook different dishes, right? Multiple flow unit types going to a restaurant. But at the same time, each dish will have to go through different station, going through different equipment, going through different cooks, right? So that's why it's going to be more complex than before. So that's the plan. We do level 1 analysis, level 2, level 3 analysis. Okay. So the very first thing that we talk about here is we are very short on time, so I would like to just give you some sort of convention on how to draw the process flow diagram. Process flow diagram. How to draw it? Then, for example, for the entry points or start points or exit point, either entry or exit, we would use the oval for it, right? When we look at the picture, that's an oval. If we talk about resources or activities or steps or station, we would use a rectangle to draw it, right? For flows or routes, we simply use arrows to show. And finally, for the wait time, buffer, transit time, queues, or lines, then we would use a triangle to denote all of these elements in the process. Okay, so that's the convention. And next time we would work on an example to show it. So I would like to thank you all for joining me today. Have a great weekend, and I will see you back next Monday. So I already post the video for the forecasting exercise in module 2. So I hope that video will help you to go through that that part of the project. So one more time, I would like to thank you all for joining me. So have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. So again, I encourage you to try the example. Module 4. Slide, let me see, slide 11. So next time we work on this together.
Professor,
Yes,
I have one question about the homework part 2, question 21.
yes,
So for that question, we do the same thing as we just did, right?
yes, that's correct. So it also a table of 3 parts. You just follow the same order that we just did, and you would answer all of the questions that I asked you.
Okay, so like in the instruction, you already have a table. So did we just fill it in, or we have to show like other? So we just have to create our own table and show calculation and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I would like you to draw your own table on a blank piece of paper like this, and then you just show step-by-step calculation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The table itself in the PDF file will not be able will not be large enough for you to write all the details, right? So either you write you draw a table on the piece of paper and write the details, or if you like to use a tablet, then you draw a table in your tablet and you you write out the details.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome, Elita.